Well, guys, Thrive Christian Fellowship is obviously alive. There's a lot happening, so praise the Lord for that. What a joy it is to iterate all that He's doing. 1 Samuel, we may or may not make it through this whole message this morning. If we don't, we'll pick up. Well, we won't pick up next week because I won't be here, but we'll pick up the following week in 1 Samuel. But let's see where we get. 1 Samuel, the entirety of chapter 6. Last week in the 5th chapter, the Ark of the Covenant was in the hands of the Philistines. Forgive me for the pun on the graphic today, but you got to lighten this thing up a little bit. Sometimes it gets a little heavy. I pray that everything you know about the Ark of the Covenant you did not learn from the Raiders of the Lost Ark, by the way. There's more biblical ways of figuring out what all went on there and what's happening. But last week, the Ark was in the hands of the Philistines, but they couldn't handle it. We saw that. They could not handle it. In a display of superiority, God toppled their false god Dagon. Remember the statue, Dagon it? He fell down. Remember on his face? It was the symbolic gesture of worship. He hit the ground on his face, just like Goliath. When Goliath fell on his face. God gets the last word. And yes, one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. So Dagon practically did that, but it was just a statue, so it was really a nothing. But we were reminded of the first commandment from God. You shall have no other gods before me. He didn't say you shall not have any other gods in place of me. He said you shall not have any other gods before me. Not in place of, but in the face of. Nothing beside Him. And for us today, you guys, it's Christ alone. Who are we putting our trust in? What are we putting our trust in? Idolatry comes in a lot of shapes and sizes. None of us probably bows to a statue today, but we certainly can bow to pursuits. We can bow to pastimes. We can bow to pleasures that usurp the place in our life that God alone wants to occupy. And we have to each ask ourselves that question. God, are you truly on the throne of my life? Or are you just a convenient addition to my life? Because if He's truly on the throne of our life, it's going to rattle our life. It's going to change our life. There are days when He's not on the throne of my life, you guys. Honest. He's not. My pursuits are. My thoughts are. And he deals with me in that. And I pray that He would deal in each of us with that. And in that area. Not yielding to God as the Spirit speaks through a megaphone like He was doing to the Philistines. And He's done this to His people and He does it to us as He speaks into our hearts. But not yielding to Him is going to greatly multiply our problems. And that's what we looked at last week as well. Those who bow to false gods, their problems will only multiply. They'll get worse. So if we're not selling our life out to Jesus Christ, guarantee you, your issues are going to get worse. It's going to get worse. It is for all of us. So we saw also that despite how things might appear to go on the outside, God is always at work. We'll look at that a little bit more today. His hand was heavy. There's that word kavod, that word for glory. His hand was heavy. He was getting the glory as He worked against the Philistines. And of course God's people were in despair. And they weren't seeing this. But God was always at work. And again, I remind us that negative headlines are not a sign that God has lost power. They're just a sign that time as we know it is coming to a close. Prophecies are being fulfilled. The clock is ticking. And God is in control. We just need to remember that. We need to hold on to that every single day. We also saw how the Philistines treated the ark like a hot potato. Remember, nobody wanted the ark, so it went from one town to another. Nobody wanted the problems that went with it. But what we saw last week is you simply can't just get rid of God. You just can't let go of Him and pass Him on to someone else and let someone else deal with Him. No, He has come to deal with every one of His creation. We don't get to pass Him on. And they're going to learn the hard ways as we see what happened to them. They finally did, if you will, pass Him off, but not without a cost. You have to make a choice. And to not make a choice is to make a choice. So He is not a hot potato. Let's deal with the Lord, man. Let's let Him deal with us and make the decisions we need to. So this week in chapter 6, and we'll get into the first verse of chapter 7 if time allows, we'll see the Philistine priests. They're not good priests. These aren't good priests. These are Philistine priests. These are godless priests who run after idols and run after many foreign gods. They're going to come up with a plan to rid themselves of the ark. And we're going to watch this morning how God will move powerfully, even in godless priests, to return the lost ark to His people. And then I'm super excited because we're going to start getting really into Samuel and Samuel coming onto the scene and doing really what he was called by God to do. We won't get there today. So let's read 1 Samuel chapter 6, beginning with the first verse. Now the ark of the Lord was in the country of the Philistines 7 months. And the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners, saying, "What shall we do with the ark of the Lord? Tell us how we should send it to its place." So they said, if you send away the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it empty, but by all means return it to him with the trespass offering. Then you will be healed, and it will be known to you why his hand is not removed from you. And then they said, what is the trespass offering which we shall return to him? They answered, 5 golden tumors and 5 golden rats, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines. For the same plague was on all of you and on your lords. Therefore you shall make images of your tumors and images of your rats that ravage the land, and you shall give glory to the God of Israel. Perhaps he will lighten his hand from you, from your gods, and from your land. Why then do you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts? When he did mighty things among them, did they not let the people go, that they might depart? Now therefore make a new cart. Take 2 milk cows which have never been yoked, and hitch the cows to the cart, and take their calves home, away from them. Then take the ark of the Lord and set it on the cart, and put the articles of gold which you are returning to him as a trespass offering in a chest by its side. Then send it away and let it go. And watch. If it goes up the road to its own territory, to Beth Shemesh, then he has done us this great evil. But if not, then we shall know that it is not his hand that struck us. It happened to us by chance. Then the men did so. They took 2 milk cows and hitched them to the cart and shut up their calves at home. And they set the ark of the Lord on the cart and the chest with the gold rats and the images of their tumors. Isn't this fun scripture, guys? Fun? Then the cows headed straight for the road to Beth Shemesh and went along the highway, lowing as they went, and did not turn aside to the right hand or to the left. And the lords of the Philistines went after them to the border of Beth Shemesh. Now the people of Beth Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley, and they lifted their eyes and saw the ark and rejoiced to see it. Then the cart came into the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh and stood there. A large stone was there. So they split the wood of the cart and offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. The Levites took down the ark of the Lord and the chest that was with it, in which were the articles of gold, and put them on the large stone. Then the men of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings and made sacrifices the same day to the Lord. So when the 5 lords of the Philistines had seen it, they returned to Ekron the same day. These are the golden tumors which the Philistines returned as a trespass offering to the Lord, 1 for Ashdod, 1 for Gaza, 1 for Ashkelon, 1 for Gath, and 1 for Ekron. And the golden rats, according to the number of all the cities of the Philistines belonging to the 5 lords, both fortified cities and country villages, even as far as the large stone of Abel, on which they set the ark of the Lord, which stone remains to this day in the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh. Then he struck the men of Beth Shemesh because they looked into the ark of the Lord. He struck 50,070 men of the people. Some of your versions leave the 50,000 out. I'll comment on that in a second. And the people lamented because the Lord had struck the people with a great slaughter. And the men of Beth Shemesh said, who is able to stand before this holy Lord God? And to whom shall it go up from us? So they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiriath Jearim, saying, the Philistines have brought back the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up with you. Verse 1 of chapter 7. Then the men of Kiriath Jearim came and took the ark of the Lord and brought it into the house of Abinadab on the hill, and consecrated Eleazar his son to keep the ark of the Lord. And we'll stop there. And we might not make it there, but we will see. So I wrote down a date in my notes, Friday, January the 29th of 2021, exactly 7 months ago. Nothing particularly exciting, I think, happened on that day. I make that comment to say that that was 7 months ago. I looked in my calendar. It seems like that not that long ago. January, my goodness, time flies so fast. But when I looked in my calendar and I expanded everything that's happened between then and now, that's quite a good amount of time, 7 months. A lot's taken place. And I do that because that was the amount of time that we see here that this ark had been with the Philistines. That's a long time. Because that entire time, the hand of God had been against them. Can you imagine day after day after day? We see the culmination of his hand being against them with these tumors. A great destruction upon the Philistines. This was a long 7 months. A lot was taking place. Deadly destruction throughout the city, chapter 5 told us. Yeah, I'm sure that made the time the ark was with them seem like an eternity. But despite that, they continued to hang on to it. They treated it like a trophy. It's like no matter how much it hurt them, they just couldn't part with their prize. We've got the ark. Yeah, but the ark is taking you out. This trophy has become a trap. It's become a death trap. You're holding on to it. Let it go. Let it go, man. So being unable to take any more punishment, the people called their priests and diviners, chapter 2, or verse 2 rather, those that they looked to for guidance. And they said, tell us what to do. How are we going to get rid of this thing? The question for me is, who do I look to for guidance? Again, these guys are going to their priests. How much had Dagon done for them so far? I mean, really, you would think they would go, it's probably not the greatest person to go to, but they didn't know anything differently. So they're going to their priests and they're asking, how are we going to do this? What shall we do? And again, I make this comment, despite the godlessness of this polytheistic system, the fact that they have so many gods and they worship so many gods, despite that, God is the one and only, and He is in control. We see that so clearly. The Philistines are going to see that too. They may not bow their knee to Him, but they're going to see that very clearly. They are. Now again, He's going to use these pagan priests to make some pretty wise points. And we're going to make some points of their points this morning. And they're going to actually make some points that we can learn from. But I want to make sure you guys were clear on this. These priests aren't turning to God. These Philistine priests aren't like denouncing Dagon and all their polytheistic gods and turning to the one true God. They're not doing that. But it's almost in the sense of irony that God will use them nonetheless to say some pretty wise things, even though they aren't bowing their knee to God. To me, that's just a display that God really is in control. He really is. And He's going to use some of the words that they say to bring out some pretty good points. Remember Job? Remember in the book of Job and how Job had friends and they were giving him advice. And the advice that they gave him, it was, if you take that advice out of context and you read what Job's friends said, they said some pretty good things. The problem was it was all messed up. They were saying things to Job that just weren't true in context. So it's kind of like that here. These priests are going to say some pretty good things. In the context of the Philistines and the Israelites and God and how He's moving, they're wrong. And we're going to see that. But nonetheless, the points they make, we're going to turn those points on their head and we're going to allow the Lord to speak into our lives. Why? Because we've got to glean something from the 6th chapter of 1 Samuel chapter 6. There's some good truth here. And I want us to be in this posture of giving God the glory. Giving God the glory. So point number 1, if you're following along on your note sheet, if you have the mobile app, you can go there too as well. We're going to make 8 points this morning. The first point is give God glory by acknowledging our guilt. Give God glory by acknowledging our guilt. Sometimes when we acknowledge our guilt, we feel like it kind of rains on the parade. I don't want to talk about that. I don't really want to talk about the fact that I'm guilty. You know, and Scripture's clear. 1 John tells us that anybody who thinks they don't have guilt and don't have sin, they deceive themselves. They're a liar, and they make God out to be a liar. Fact of the matter is we're all guilty. And as Christians, listen, we know that, and 1 John tells us this, yes, everybody sins, but if you sin and you confess your sin to God, He's faithful and just to forgive you of your sin and to cleanse you from all unrighteousness. So let's not deny that we're sinners. Let's not try to, that's not that big a deal. Yeah, well, you know that thing you did? Yeah, but it's not that big a deal. God understands. It's not, no. Let's not poo-poo it. Let's not shove it under the carpet. Let's acknowledge our guilt before the Lord. Because that's not raining on the parade. Because when you acknowledge your guilt, you're also acknowledging the one that came to take that guilt away. And that's where we have to hold on to. So these priests are basically saying, hey, you got to make these guilt, you got to send this guilt offering with the ark when you send it back, meaning they were guilty. And they were kind of acknowledging their guilt there. Someone had been offended. Someone had been wronged. And that one who was offended was God. It wasn't Dagon. He didn't care. You know, he was a statue. What could he do? But God had been offended. Meaning what? Meaning God is right. Meaning that the one true God alone determines what is right. So this whole idea of right and wrong, it's not culturally dependent. It's not time sensitive. It's not up for grabs. There's a definition of morality. And it comes from one place, and it comes from the one and only true God. And even these Philistine priests got it. Hey, you know what? We've offended Him. He's tearing us up. He's tearing our people up. He's tearing our land up. He's tearing our God up. Y'all are guilty. Send a guilt offering when you send the ark back. Admission of guilt. We know that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We know that. But how they went about acknowledging their guilt was all wrong. These priests are like, you got to make images of your tumors. I mean, guys, did y'all read that? Did y'all hear that? That's weird. That's weird. But if you read history in the culture of the polytheistic cultures in our world, in our history. That's what they did. They appeased their gods by making images of the very source of destruction. You see it throughout history. So it's exactly what they're doing. The Bible's a book of history. 1 Samuel's a book of history. We talked about that when we flew through the 30,000 feet series. It's a book of history. So the writer of 1 Samuel is basically saying this is what they did back then. Nothing weird. We think it's weird, but it's nothing weird. That's exactly what they did. So they're making images of their tumors. And mice and rats are brought in here too. Now, we don't read anything about mice and rats in chapter 5. A lot of scholars think that perhaps this great destruction that came upon the people might have been a rat infestation or a mouse infestation, kind of like the bubonic plague. Not for sure. We don't read about the rats in chapter 5. We definitely read about the rats in chapter 6. And these dudes definitely knew rats were real because they were making golden images of them. Can you imagine being the guy responsible for casting a mold of a golden rat or a mouse? The tail's a little too short. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, that's weird. But that's what they did. That's what they did. They made images. Yeah, but I think about that. We create structures, don't we, sometimes? We create programs. We have facades. We do these little tricks and gimmicks. We make little kingdoms that can be touched and seen because we think that's going to get us somewhere. You know? These might appease the gods that we erect in our own minds, but they're not what God is looking for. I never want us to be a body. I never want us to be a church. I never want us to be a people that get wrapped up in stuff. Whether it's physical stuff or thoughts or plans or programs, you name it. Oh, that's trendy. Oh, that's nifty. Oh, that's quick. I like that. Man, that's attractive. I forget it all. Not that any of it in itself is bad, but we don't create these little images and worship them. Like, you know what? We don't want to do that. We want to bow down to the Lord. We want to get our guidance and our leadership from Him. So this is just showing how little these priests knew about the real God. Make some images. They'll make Him happy. Men, remember a couple of years ago, our men's retreat. What was our can you stand up and show everybody your shirt, JD? I appreciate that. Right on cue. Go around and show everybody that shirt. Not go around, just stand there. We got some theme music we can play while he's modeling that shirt right there. There's a runway. Come on, Jake. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking. That shirt broken, you know. And some people have shared the story of that T-shirt from the men's retreat. And they're like, yeah, I've worn the shirt. And people looked at me like I was a nut. They saw the word broken on front of the shirt. It's like, what's up with broken? What does that mean? And then they're like, hold on a second. Then they turn around and let them read the back of it, right? Psalm 51, listen, for you do not desire sacrifice, or else I would give it. You do not delight in burnt offering. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart. So guys, it's not what we do on the outside. It's not our little images that we make and put our trust in. No, it's not the outward action. It's the posture of the heart. It's the posture of the heart. I love this quote by C.S. Lewis. I love this quote. He says, God doesn't want something from us. He simply wants us. He wants us. By Christian Fellowship, God's not looking for you to do something for Him. God's not, no brownie points for the Haiti team. No high fives for the Appalachia team. No extra hot sauce and dessert. Maybe not in the same mouthful. For people serving in Thrive Kids. No, it's not what we do. Doing things for Him are great. That comes from the posture of the inside. And so often we'll do things or we'll erect images or we'll put our trust in these outward things. Oh yeah, God's really going to smile on me for that. No, He's not. He's not going to smile on us for doing something. He's going to smile on us for being something. The one who says yes to Jesus. The one who says, yes, Jesus is the Lord of my life. Now, you do with me whatever you want to do. Whether you see that or whether people see that or whether people don't see that. God is not looking for something from us. He's looking for us. He wants us. Phil Wickham sings that song that we sing here occasionally. And it starts like this. How great the chasm that lay between us. How high the mountain I could not climb. That's right. God closed that gap, that chasm between us and Him. We didn't close it. God closed it. And He closed it by sending Jesus Christ. Many of us try to bridge that chasm by doing something for God, doing something kind for others. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Point number 2, give God glory by acknowledging His power. Give God glory by acknowledging His power. You know, they were admitting that it was God's hand that was against them. God's hand was against their gods. God's hand was against their land. And we saw that again in chapter 5. Again, the God who was powerful over all other gods. And they were admitting that. They were admitting that. But you would think, given everything that had happened, and given the amount of gold they had coughed up to make these crazy images, you would think their hearts were turned. They're like, yeah, we get it. God is real. God is powerful. And they were saying he was powerful. But no, their hearts didn't turn. They didn't want to fully admit it. This whole episode here is kind of a test. And if you read it that way, that's exactly what it is. It's kind of a test to see if it was really God doing all this. Is it really God? We redeem the story of Gideon, and we use this phrase today in our own lives. We just kind of put a fleece out there. Now, if you weren't in the church, you're not familiar with that, you're like, what does that mean? I don't have time to get into it, but we do that sometimes. We're like, well, I'm going to test God and see if this is really him speaking. You know what? That can be so dangerous. God obliges sometimes, and he says, okay, all right, Gideon, I'm going to make the fleece wet and the ground dry. Okay, little Gideon, I'm going to make the ground dry and the fleece wet. And sometimes he's like, no, never mind, I'm going to choose someone else because you don't trust me. That's happened to me before, and I've looked in the rearview mirror and gone, wow, I thought it was God. I read his word, I heard the pastor, I sang the song, I was in the Thrive group, I served like I think God's speaking to me, and I drug my feet. And I looked in the rearview mirror a few weeks later, and it was someone else that God chose for something, because I drug my feet. Why? Because I didn't acknowledge his power. I didn't bow to him. I wanted to put a little fleece out there and test him. And sometimes it's okay. I'm not saying it's bad. Like if you're wrestling through something and you need to hear from the Lord, God, please make it clear to me. God, please make it clear to me. And he's going to meet us where we are. But if the Holy Spirit's speaking so clearly to you already, and you know he's speaking clearly to you, and you're like, well, I just want to make sure, God's like, you already know. That's okay. I'll choose someone else. Guys, we don't want to be found in that place, do we? We don't want to be found in that place. So there's a dangerous thing about getting close to the Lord. We're responsible for what we find out. We really are. We got to acknowledge his power. Third point, it profits us nothing to resist God. And again, keep in mind, these are things these pagan priests are saying. It profits us nothing to resist God. The word of God, what God had done for Israel in the Exodus and getting them out of Egypt, that word had spread throughout the then known world. So these guys are talking about Pharaoh and the Egyptians and that kind of thing. They had hardened their hearts against God, but the people still made it out. God's people still made it out despite the hardness of the heart of Pharaoh and the Egyptians. And in the process, God dealt severely with the Egyptians, just like he was doing with the Philistines here. And that's why these priests are like, y'all remember the story of Exodus? And how the Egyptians were like working against God? That didn't get them anywhere. It's not going to get us anywhere either. Let's not resist God. You guys remember the story of Jonah? Anybody here familiar with the story of Jonah? Whale vomit? Anybody? Okay. If you don't know it, it's only 4 chapters long. I encourage you to read the book. Read the whole book of Jonah. It's a really great picture of of the beautiful, wonderful, delicious, savory, aromatic results of resisting God. It's really gross. It's really gross. We know the story. The priests wanted to hold out that maybe all that was happening was just happening by chance. Guys, when we say that something just happens by chance, that's robbing God of glory. It really is. Look, I understand not everything that happens has great eternal meaning, or not everything that happens comes with this hidden message. Oh my goodness, I put that cup of water in the refrigerator, and when I opened it and looked back, it was only half full. What is God saying to me? Lord, what are you trying to speak to me? Nothing. Your son drank it and put it back in there. Like, it's nothing eternally significant about it. You know what I mean? Sometimes we can go overboard with this. It's like, oh my goodness, there was a full tank of gas in my truck the other day, and now it's only half full. What is God trying to say? That I need to be filled with the Spirit? That I'm empty. I need to empty myself of the power that is in me, and I need to be filled with the power of God. Like, what is he trying to say to me? No, maybe you just burn a half a tank of gas, and it's really, you know what I'm saying? So let's not overanalyze things all the time. I think that God is speaking in everything. I was playing darts with my boys the other day down in the basement, and I'm not a sports guy. If anybody here knows me, you know the last thing that I'm about is sports. But I got to brag just a minute here. And I'll say a few days ago. I don't know if it was a few days ago or a few months ago, but it seems like it was yesterday. But anyway, Maybe it was 7 months ago. Wow, how time flies, you know? But I'm down there, and, I'm throwing my darts, and all 3 of the darts that I threw. So you got bullseye, right? And then what do you call that little teeny circle outside the bullseye? I don't know if it has a name. But it's almost bullseye. That's what I call it. I call it almost bullseye. Bullseye is 50 points, right? Darts, am I true? The round is purple on ours. It's 25 points. All my darts were like, I think it was Josiah. He was like, what? I'm like, did you see that? Did you see that? That was good, wasn't it? All 3 of them landed like right there. It was so cool to see that. And, I looked at him and I said, son, you know me. That there's no skill in my bones. That was totally luck. That was totally chance. But that made me think about this word chance. Chance is not a power. Got any mathematicians out here? Any statisticians, probability folk? I took a few classes on it. I think I remember how to spell it. Other than that, I don't remember much about it. But chance isn't a power. Chance describes the probability of something happening. But those hits, it didn't come from necessarily my skill, right? But they came as the result of speed and aim, whether I knew it or not, and wind resistance. There were forces behind those darts that caused them to go there. It wasn't chance, because chance is a description of probability. There is no power in chance. Why are these guys saying, oh, maybe it just happened coincidentally, maybe it's just by chance? Yeah, chance doesn't do anything. We might say, what are the chances of something happening? But chance has no power. God has power. And the point I'm making is this, 1600s, 1700s, Matthew Poole, here's what he said. And this is a better point than the darts. Wicked men will sooner believe the most uncertain and ridiculous things than own the visible demonstrations of God's power and His providence. Let that sink in. Wicked men will sooner believe the most uncertain and ridiculous things than to own the visible demonstrations of God's power and His providence. We rob God of glory when we say things just happen. Things don't just happen. There's a God who's in control, There's a God who is definitely in control. So these Philistine priests, they set up this test of sorts. Again, is God at work, or is all this just by chance? Obviously, we know that's faulty. We know that's faulty. But I want to try to draw, we'll stop here this morning. We'll only get through 4 points today. I'm going to stop with this point. That means we get to do a Return of the Lost Ark Part 2. There's going to be a sequel. I like that. That's planned. That's cool. But you're going to have to wait for it. Because I'm going to be in Haiti next week. So you're going to have to wait for it. Can y'all wait for it? I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. Killing me. So, back to Scripture here. So they set this test up. Okay, so is God at work? Or is all this happening by chance? So I want to try to squeeze a little bit of credit out here. Something that we can redeem. We'll make it a 4th point. Number 4, recognize an opportunity for God to move. Be open to it. Be open to God moving. Just give him that. God, I'm doubting here. I don't know. I think I moved here and I moved to King George. This is not me. Because I know God called me and my wife and our family here. But you might be thinking, man, I'm here, I'm moved to King George, and then I'm like, I don't know, this is messed up. I think I missed something somewhere along the way. Hey, listen, if that's you, maybe King George isn't your final destination. That is on this planet. But I'll guarantee you God has you here as one step along your journey. There is no accident that you are sitting in the blue chair, in a red chair, in a gray chair. Praise the Lord for any color chair. In a brown chair. Whatever chair you're sitting in, there's no accident. It's no accident you're in King George. It's no accident you're in this room. It's no accident you're sitting in the very seat you're sitting in. Because you know what? There might be somebody next to you who needs some love. And you could have sat over here, but well, I chose to sit here. Yeah, maybe you chose, or maybe God's going to use it anyway that I'm sitting. You guys get my point? We've got to recognize, we've got to say, God, you're big enough that you can move, and I might not be able to see it, I might not be able to understand it, but I'm just going to get to that point in my brain. God, you can move. You could use this circumstance for something different than what I'm seeing. You could use me for something different than what I'm acknowledging. Because you're that big. Who sang it? I'm Like You, Tara. Song just always gets me. I think it was Mandisa. I could be wrong. Doesn't matter. I don't want to box you in. You've been doing big things since the world began. I got to sing it in order to remember it. I don't want to box you in. I can't remember how it goes. You've been doing big things since the world began. When will I see that you're big enough? Yeah, you're big enough. And sometimes we want to box God in and go, oh, that's not God. God wouldn't do that. God couldn't show up now. God couldn't take this and make this out of it. God couldn't. Really? Oh, yeah, he could. He could move. So they took 2 milk cows. Like, what's the big deal with milk cows? Anybody here ever been around a farm with milk cows? A dairy farm? You get out early in the morning and here's what you hear. Oh, oh. Those cows aren't saying, let's go to the barn and play darts. That's not what they're saying. They're saying, milk me, please. Okay? They milk me, because that's what they're, milk cows. Milk cows. Okay. It doesn't come from the refrigerator. It comes from a cow. I hope I didn't just burn anybody's, anyway. 2 milk cows, which had never been yoked, take their calves from them. Instinctively, their calves, they would have returned to their calves because they are mother cows. They had never been yoked. Instinctively, they would buck against the yoke. They've got this cart that they're pulling, and their cows are milk cows. They're not oxen. Instinctively, they would have bucked against the weight of the cart. What? But God is bigger than instinct. Even for a cow. Oh, come on, John. It's just a cow. Listen. The odds and the stats and the data mean nothing to God. Again, they're yoking these cows to this cart. I'm going to tell you right now, when I read this, I see these 2 cows as being agents of God's glory. They are. They're agents of God's glory. They should have turned and gone back, but they didn't. They beat the odds. Israel had resisted God, and we see where that got them. The Philistines were resisting God, and we see where that got them. But God used a couple of cows to get the glory. And this is going to sound like a crazy prayer, but I'm going to say it and pray it nonetheless. God, help me be like one of those cows. You know what I mean? Lowing as they went. They were lowing. That's what dairy cows do. Again, relieve me, milk me, please. A little verbal protest, and sometimes we give God a little lip, and He doesn't smack us down for it always. We give God a little lip, but look, they went anyway. And they went straight, and they didn't turn to the right or to the left. There were no side roads. There were no detours. They went from Ekron to Beth Shemesh. That was a small border town between Judah, the people of God, and the Philistine territory. It was about 7 miles. These cows who had never been yoked got yoked onto a brand new cart, and they said, "Yah, go!" And they were like, "Where do we go? Do you have a GPS for me?" They didn't have none of that. These cows just took off, and it says they went straight. Now, straight doesn't necessarily mean as the crow flies. These dudes didn't run through no back streams and woods. They have to be on a piece of ground that would allow carts. So as this thing is traversing, they didn't, oh, look, there's a side road that leads to, nope. Look, there's a side road that, nope, straight ahead. I want to be like that cow. So often I turn to the left and I turn to the right, and I got this little fancy idea about something over here I think would be fun and nifty. It's not. It's a bad gig from the start. But I turn. I want to be like that cow. I want to go straight, Lord, into the direction that you're leading me. I don't want to turn to the left or to the right. I want to take the load that you've given me to bear, and I want to take it all the way. And that's exactly what those cows did. So, Lord, make me like one of those cows. And we'll stop there. Read ahead. Read ahead. Read the rest of chapter 6 on your own. Try to figure out where we're going to go with it. Go ahead and read chapter 7. Look forward to journeying through that with you guys. Worship team, if you guys could come up, we're going to close. We're going to respond to the Lord in prayer. He is the one and only God. He's the one and only God. We're going to sing that. He's the one and only. He's great and mighty, and He is worthy of our praise. And I want us to end on that note. And you know, these guys thought the glory of God had left them, and the glory of God hadn't left them at all. The glory of God hasn't left us at all. If you guys will rewind in your mind, and for some of us this could be painful, you rewind in your mind of the mess that you've had to live through in your life. I'm going to tell you what, God was there. And God has brought you to where you are right now. He has redeemed you. So we're going to sing another song that's going to say this. All my life you've been faithful. I may not be able to see it, and I may never seen it then, but Lord, I'm going to declare today that all my life you have been faithful, and you have been so good. When it seemed the glory was leaving, God, you had me in the grip of your mighty right hand. You've held me. You've never let go. Father, thank you this morning for these truths that are larger than we will ever figure out. God, we worship you because you're worthy of our praise, not because our situations look good. God, we worship you because you are worthy of our worship, not because the circumstances in our life are appealing or pleasing. We've worshiped so many things that have led to nothing. Forgive us for that, Lord. Lord, you know what our hearts mean when we ask you that you would make us like those cows. Help us to walk straight and true, not turn to the left or to the right. To go exactly where you've called us. Lord, speak to our hearts even now as we respond to you in worship, Lord. If there's a direction or a call or a word that we're missing from you, Lord, open our ears, open our eyes. We want to see you. We want to hear from you, Lord, as we surrender all we have to you. In Jesus' name.